I enjoy doing this because I'm always surprised at what I say. Like you, I'm anticipating what's going to happen here. How many people have heard of a gentleman with the name of Dick Tallure, famous fly tyer and fly fisherman? Dick Tallure pioneered fly tying, and for many years would go down to Hunter's fly tying shop over in New Boston. And I had studied his books, tried to learn how to tie flies, and I was excited one day in 1993 to see that he was giving a class. At that time I was teaching school in Swansea, Monadnock Regional High School, and I had 4 young men who desperately wanted to learn how to tie flies. I had a dear co-worker by the name of Deb Crowder who had a grant, a drug and alcohol abuse prevention grant. So I went to Deb and said, Deb, I think we could prevent some drug and alcohol abuse by introducing these young men to fly fishing. It was a stretch. But in a weak moment, she bought it. We sent the 4 young men over to Hunter's at a cost of $300 apiece. They spent 3 days with Uncle Dickie learning how to tie flies and how to fish. One of those young men went on, got his PhD in aquatic entomology. He's now the president of Trout Unlimited in Michigan. And the other boys have all been avid trout fishermen for the duration. What I didn't realize was a somewhat sheepish answer when I asked them how it had gone. And it took me 10 years to find out that Uncle Dickie had not only taught them how to tie flies, but how to mix and consume martinis. So much for drug and alcohol prevention. So, anyhow, people frequently refer to fly fishing as standing in the water and waving a stick, which is what it looks like to passersby, and what fly fishermen jokingly understate. So, what is it really? Really, it's a connection to everything alive in the aquatic ecosystem. It's basically puppetry. And what you're trying to do is design a puppet that looks the same size, the same color, the same shape as fish food. And then you have to present it so that it looks alive. This is in a theater that has a glass roof that happens to be moving. The aisles in the theater are moving. The stage is moving, and your audience has fins and gills. You will know if you've been successful if one member of the audience happens to go shooting up through the roof and careening back into the water. It's an engaging activity where your mind is totally focused on presenting what's going on, presenting this puppet, and looking for cues in the environment around you. Trout have to eat enough to surpass the energy expended in order to survive, and at the same time, they need to avoid predation long enough to sign, stamp, and send the next generation into the future in the proper size gravel under oxygenated water. One bad logging job, one forest fire, one golf course can silt the gravel into quietude. Food's delivered on a liquid conveyor belt from up current in creeks and streams and rivers, or from weed beds and substrate to still water and ponds, and the trout have to face up current. Any movement that appears unnatural, a drag on the drift, a line passing overhead, the reflection of a ragstock Hawaiian shirt, can send the trout bailing to the nearest bomb shelter. Usually it's the depths of a pool or an undercut bank. Movements that mimic live food in the right place at the right time, lined up with the trout's location next to one of the conveyor belts, can result in the tug that is the drug, that is adrenaline. So, it's hard to picture what's going on here, and it's a little astounding. We have a creature that's designed to breathe in the water, to move in the water, and to live in the water, transformed into a creature that breathes air, flies in the air, and lives on the land for a short, brief period of time. This is far more of a transition than David Banner into the Incredible Hulk. It's as all these guys do it simultaneously. That would be like the population of New York City transforming into the Incredible Hulk simultaneously. Maybe that's not such a stretch of the imagination. But anyhow, how do they do that? How do they know that? And how do they synchronize? How do they choreograph? There's something going on that resonates with post-material science, with quantum physics, and with our ancient everlasting souls. My first green drake hatch happened on Lower Otter Creek in Randolph County, West Virginia, where my future brother-in-laws and I had crashed through the rapids on the Middle Fork in truck hoods that we had welded together the week before. The operative word is crashed. I had to go back. The place was just too appealing, and I wanted to do some ginseng prospecting and fishing, and went back to the same spot that we had been. And there was a green drake hatch on, backlit by the sun, and I just laid the rod down and watched it. They would raise and lower millions and millions of these magnificent creatures, and it just took my breath away. A few days later, I had to go back and see if the hatch was still on. It was not. So I took a fly. I took a fly that I had tied using Dick Delure's tutelage, called Hornberg, and drifted it. I don't know why, but I kept paying out line and letting it go further and further down the stream. Well, 75 feet away, this magnificent brook trout shot to the surface, attached to my line with my fly in its mouth. So I retrieved it, ran, fell in the water, swam, flailed around, finally got this fish, looked at it, and it was just awe-inspiring. This flashing emerald in the sun, and I released it. It wasn't out of etiquette, it was out of gratitude. As fate would have it, the local fly fishing guide came around the corner, walked up to me, and said, "I see you've finally gotten baptized." I knew he wouldn't believe what had just happened, so I told him that I had. And with that, began a long career. I'm grateful to a number of old timers in the area. There is a cadre of fishermen who were machinists and factory workers and tradesmen, names like Ora Smith, Kitty Gleckler, Frenchie Parento, Art Fisher, one still alive, still fishing, 93 years old. And these gentlemen designed their own flies. A guy in Marlborough by the name of Larry Anatuck has written their stories. I have several of Kenning's flies here. They're unconventional. They have unusual names. You know, we have a sow belly. We have a stone roller, a Hunts Pond special, and his own favorite, the Montreal Escort. Glad that came to me in time. I can recall one quick one. Ken Gleckler and I, and his constant companion, Herschel Body, were on Hunts Pond with me. We were in the boat, we were trolling using these patterns. Herschel at that time was 92. He was a full-blooded Penobscot, had come down here in the lumber industry. He set up sawmills, and that was his trade. Herschel's dad had been killed in River Drive on the Androscoggin. Herschel was 13, the oldest male in the family, so the company offered him a job. As a skinny 13-year-old, he was just the right size to run out on the log jams and stuff the dynamite down in before they would blow the jam, which he did. And Herschel had an attitude where he was not intimidated by anything. He didn't care, even at 93. We came in off of Hunts Pond. They were auctioning off the local farm. A young man came down to us. Of course, this generation would hide their flies so no one could see them. No one was going to copy them because they had learned the hard way, and if you wanted to know, you could learn the hard way too. This young fellow walks up with a New York accent, and unfortunately we had to show the fish. He said, man, those are nice trout. Herschel looks at him and says, perch. The guy looked back at him. He says, speckled perch. And off we went. The challenge, as was identified in the opening remarks, is to connect the next generation. We've been successful, I think, doing that, introducing it into the schools, and that's our challenge, to go ahead and get this next generation involved in this good work, to have these young people serve on our conservation commissions, our open space committees, and include them at an early age so that they develop the involvement that is going to let us continue and thrive. Thank you much.